pistols, prayer, and potluck. This is Armed Lutheran Radio.
Hi, folks. Welcome to Armed Lutheran Radio, a show about guns, hunting, competitive shooting, the natural right of self-defense, and what God's Word says about the issues surrounding gun rights and gun ownership. I'm your host, Lloyd Bailey, the Armed Lutheran, and this is episode number 356. Thank you all so much for making Armed Lutheran Radio a part of your week. If you are new to the show, welcome aboard. If you are a longtime listener, thank you for your continued support. It is wonderful to have you here. And today we're going to be talking about some recent news. I am flying solo this week. It's been a crazy week at work and with volleyball and all kinds of craziness. And as you're listening to this, I am probably sitting at the K. Bailey Hutchinson Convention Center in Dallas, watching my daughter play on day 2 of a 3-day tournament. I've also, at this point, have experienced the wonderful moment of seeing my daughter confirmed for the first time. Her confirmation, it is Palm Sunday. It's Confirmation Sunday. My daughter was confirmed this morning, and as you listen to this, we'll have taken communion for the first time, and it is an absolute, just a proud and delightful moment as a parent to have guided her through that, and she has done such a wonderful job with her studies and her preparation for confirmation. Today, not such happy ideas or things to discuss, but we'll get into that in a moment. Just something that's been on my mind since the horrible news out of Nashville this week. Before we get to that, I do want to mention the wonderful people who make this show possible, the members of the Reformation Gun Club. Armed Lutheran Radio is listener funded. If you haven't heard me say this before, even if you have, you're going to hear me say it again. We don't have any advertising. We don't have any sponsors. We used to be sponsored by the wonderful people at Cook's Holsters, and we are forever grateful for their support over the years. But we are supported by the listeners of the show now, and basically what that is something we call the Reformation Gun Club. Members of the fans of the show who value what we do, they put their money where their mouth is, they want to see the show continue, and they like the cool perks that come along with being a member, which include access to hundreds of hours of exclusive content, some really cool Armed Lutheran swag, and invitations to our monthly online hangouts, one of which we had just this past week, episode 355. If you have not checked that out, the video is available. It's always a great time, and you could join them if you would like. This week, I do want to thank William from Bentonville, Arkansas, Paul from McKinney, Texas, Steve from Grovetown, Georgia, Daniel from Chehalis, Washington, Gregg from Holly, Michigan, Robert from Monroe, Georgia, the infamous Johnny B., Annita from Old Fort, Tennessee, and Guillaume from Osage Beach, Missouri. Thank you to all of the members of the Reformation Gun Club who make this show possible every week. I really do appreciate it, and I love the opportunity to hang out with you every month. And if you would like to find out more and to come join us for our monthly online hangouts, go visit armedlutheran.us/gun club and sign up today. You can find out about all of the membership benefits and the tiers and all of that, and sign up. We would love to have you come join us and hang out for the April online hangout later this month. Okay, as I said, today's topic, not exactly a happy one, but this has been on my mind since the early news of this incident this week in Nashville. Folks, it is my opinion at this point. I've tried to stay optimistic. I've tried to be a voice of optimism. But I think we're at a point in this country where we need a national divorce. Not a civil war. We need a divorce. We need a parting of ways. There simply isn't anything holding us together as a nation any longer. A recent poll found that roughly a third of Americans think that patriotism is important. That number has gone from the mid-60s to somewhere around 30% in 4 years. The number of people who think that having children is important is roughly a third. Or that faith and church are important, that religion is important, maybe a third of the country. And we have documented on the show many times the declines and the declines in the understanding of what it is even to be a Christian, to understand what it is our faith is all about. Only about 40% think that hard work is important. But a vast majority of Americans think that money is important. We really do not have in this country any more shared values. We don't even agree on what reality is anymore, much less the esoteric things like taxation and border security and crime. But we don't even agree on the common truths, the truths about reality that we can see and touch, biological reality that we have understood for millennia. We've now redefined all of that. We've redefined all of the common values that used to hold this nation together. And the left and the news media, I know that's redundant, but they're in lockstep in their determination that the hill they're willing to die on is in defense of child mutilation and the right of men dressed as women to dance provocatively in front of toddlers. That's the hill they want to die on. So we don't need a civil war, ladies and gentlemen. We're already in one. And now, in Nashville, the first shots in that war were fired when a gender-confused woman shot and killed 9 people at a Christian school where she was once a student. I normally say that we should reserve judgment on these things for 72 hours. I'm recording that within this episode within the 72-hour window. It will be well beyond the 72-hour window when you hear this, so we're safe. But I think I'm spot on in my assumptions and my suspicions this time. The shooter was a former student. The school is a Christian school. The shooter was trans. The media and leftist politicians have been stoking this insane belief that somehow trans people across the country are on the verge of genocide in America. That because people don't want their kids exposed to grown men dancing provocatively in scanty women's clothing, because we don't want that in front of our kids, that somehow that means we want to exterminate all trans people. Pro-trans groups have suggested violent protests like the ones in the 60s. Recently, a professor at Wayne State University was suspended for posting on social media that it is virtuous to kill people with whom you disagree politically. I'm not surprised that he wasn't fired. I am surprised that the university suspended him instead of defending his right to free speech. The depersoning of political opponents that started with the Clinton crime family in the 90s has almost reached its logical conclusion. Now remember, back before the Clintons, before that load of garbage came to Washington, specifically Hillary, there was a time when the left and the right could disagree vehemently on the Hill in the Sunday talk shows, but still get together and talk as people. Tip O'Neill and who was Speaker of the House during Reagan's presidency, the two of them could spar all day long politically, but they could still come together and sit down for drinks. I don't think we can do that anymore, because when the Clintons came along, it was not... Political opponents were not just people with different opinions. The Clinton crime family basically labeled every person with whom they disagreed politically as evil. They defined them as evil. And when your opponents are evil, you can't justify sitting down and talking to them. You can't justify being friendly with them because your supporters will not accept it. And so what do you have to do? You have to eradicate those people. You have to get rid of them. You have to silence them. You have to censor them. So this trans person's identity is at the center of this attack. The police chief in Nashville had to begrudgingly accept, without getting into specifics, that that was probably the case. This trans person was probably not affirmed at that Christian school, which means they did not accept her gender identity. Probably wouldn't use her pronouns. So she decided to do something about it. And notice that I am specifically referring to the shooter as she. That's her biological sex, or was. Now that she's assumed room temperature, we can speak in the past tense, but that was her biological sex. I'm not going to be respectful to a mass murderer's pronouns. But that's exactly what the media is doing in places, referring to the shooter as he or him. Because we can't offend anybody by referring to a mass murderer. We can't misgender a mass murderer. Heaven forfend. To top it all off, the media is actually excusing the shooter's actions. It's okay to go out and kill children because Tennessee, for example, has a new law that bans the mutilation of children. Somehow, in the minds of the media, that makes the shooter's actions understandable. That provides the motive. We are in an ideological war, thanks to the rhetoric of the left, that is warming towards an actual war. And I don't think there's a way back. Where do you compromise? Where do you find middle ground? Okay, a little bit of mutilation is okay. A little bit of drag is okay. Waving a massive strap-on dong at toddlers is okay as long as they're not able to touch it, I guess. The White House actually honored a trans woman, that is a biological man, during Women's History Month. Women are being systematically, for all the work of the feminist movement, women are systematically, by the left, being erased and supplanted by men. ESPN honored Leah Thomas, a biological man and, as it turns out, a sexual deviant during Women's History Month. NPR this week had to back off of a claim that they made that, biological men, that is, trans women, biological men, don't really have that much of an advantage over biological women. I mean, that's all just a myth. Really? AOC tweeted something about people who menstruate. What? The left, and I've joked about this for a year, and it's not a joke anymore, refer to birthing persons instead of mothers. You actually had a woman testify before Congress, I believe, it was last week or a couple of weeks ago, that men can breastfeed. I'm sorry, but we're not even sharing the same reality, much less the same country. So in my opinion, in my humble opinion, for the common good of the people of this country, I think we need to consider a national divorce, because these divides in basic truth cannot be bridged. How do you bridge the divide between your truth and the truth? You can't. We are no longer the United States of America. We are just states. And that's it. The idea that we and our bloated bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. represent the citizens of this nation is absurd at this point. We disagree on everything. And not just in shades and degrees here, but diametrically different opinions on free speech, gun rights, freedom of religion, taxes, crime, border security, the right to life, national security, foreign relations, all the basic political stuff that is you would expect. That's always been, sort of the dividing line between left and right. But we can't even agree on the basic fundamental biological truth anymore. And nobody in their right mind wants a civil war. Nobody. I think you may hear some people say that they think they do, but they don't. We live in a very cushy, we live very cushy lives, very comfortable existence that we have here in this country. And an actual shooting war would be devastating. We gripe and groan when gas prices go up $1 or $2, or when our internet service is out. But wait until there's no gas. Wait until there's no internet. We gripe when our Amazon packages get delayed, but wait till there's no way to get those packages to you. When there is no Amazon. When there's no power, no food, and people are killing each other in the streets over preferred pronouns. And we need to end this madness. We need to pray for an end to this madness, for unity if we can have it, for peace if we can have it. But it may just be that unity is impossible, but peace is possible. I think, by peacefully going our separate ways. We'll call it the United States of Insanity and the United States of America. But the two cannot coexist. Now, there's an argument to be made that we shouldn't give up on a United States. That by giving up and dividing the country left from right politically, we're just giving up on the political process. We're giving up on those who live in those in behind enemy lines, if you will, in leftist states, in the United States of Insanity. There may be very good people still living there who are partly sane, and we'd be condemning generations to mutilation and abortion without limit and tyranny. But let's face it, those people are already living under tyranny, and they have for generations. And remember that as soon as Roe versus Wade was struck down, as soon as it was struck down, leftist states began declaring themselves as abortion safe havens. And as more and more states have moved to ban child mutilation and drag queens grooming kids, leftist states have stepped up to declare themselves safe havens for child mutilation and groomers. So we're already at that point. People are voting with their feet. I mean, won't people just go from flee from states where they disagree with each other? Won't there be just mass migration? We're already seeing mass migration. And we're seeing mass migration in a bad way at the southern border, but we're seeing it politically. People are deciding, just look at the migration patterns, say, between New York, New Jersey, and Florida, California, and Texas. States like Tennessee and Georgia. Compare those to the leftist states that are losing people. Well, what about, won't that disrupt supply chains? Won't we have problems with power and water supplies? Well, my answer to that is simply that our supply chains are pretty well beansed as it is. I would foresee states working together, absent the benevolent hand of the federal government and bureaucrats forcing them to do things, to help one another. This doesn't have to be an adversarial split. What about the military? How would that work? Well, let every state or group of states keep the bases and the equipment and the personnel that they already have. I think we need a confederation of states, for lack of a better term. Maybe that's not the best term. But something like the European Union, where you have independent American countries that work together economically and militarily. I'm not suggesting that we break into 50 different countries, but states, because I would foresee states with shared values joining together. Right-leaning states, left-leaning states, moderate states, whatever. And then Washington, D.C. we can just get rid of that nest of vipers, and that little piece of land can be a national park or something, or we can the citizens who live there can decide which of the countries they want to be a part of. And that'll solve the question about, Puerto Rico and the Pacific and Caribbean territories. They can join whoever they want or become independent, whatever. And what about energy? What about travel? What about currency? I can hear the questions. Well, look, Europe went from an amalgamation of dozens of tiny countries to a continental federation. I'm just suggesting that we recognize that that's what we already are. We're not a united nation anymore. E pluribus unum, our national motto, from many one. It no longer applies. No longer applies. Multos non unos would be more like it. We are many, but we are not one. And the sooner that we recognize and accept that, the better it will be for all of us in the future. All right, that's what I had on my heart and my mind this week. If you have any questions or any comments, any gripes or complaints about that little rant, then be sure to visit our feedback page. I'd love to hear from you. Leave us a voice message, and we would love to respond to it in a future episode. Next week, who knows what's going to be next week? I'm going to try to get together with Pastor Bennett. We'll do a Clinging to God and Guns show next week, hopefully, although I'm sure next week is going to be insane for him too. So maybe we don't do that until the week after because next week is Holy Week, And so he's got his hands full already, so I suspect it will not be a Clinging to God and Gun show because he's got enough on his plate as it is. So probably will be another commentary show like this, or something else fun, maybe a guest. We'll see what we can put together. So whatever we decide to do, until then, keep shooting, keep praying. We'll talk to you next time.
For show notes, be sure to visit our website at www.armedlutheran.us. Check out the Facebook page, The Armed Lutheran, or join our Facebook group, Fans of Armed Lutheran Radio. If you like what you hear, please leave us a comment on our feedback page at armedlutheran.us/feedback, or a review on iTunes, and let us know what you think. Thank you for listening to Armed Lutheran Radio, a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network.